With nearly 12,000 tools available, selecting the right MarTech can be challenging. Meet the MarTech Intelligence Reports, free buyer's guides exploring specific platforms, including purchase considerations, leading players, adoption trends, and more. No matter where you are in the purchase journey, MarTech Intelligence Reports can help.
Welcome to Pioneering Change, ABM and the Role of Performance Marketing. Thank you for joining us, what will be a thought-provoking 20 to 30 minutes from two industry veterans. I guess I am one of those industry veterans. My name is Chris Golec. I've been in B2B digital marketing for 25 years now, best known for founding Demandbase and helping build the ABM category. So really excited to be here. I'm also the founder and CEO of Channel99. Joining me today is an old friend, Nick Panayi, and Nick met me back in 2015 when they became our first $1 million customer. Nick was instrumental in helping us really build and validate the first B2B advertising platform. So excited to have him here today. Nick, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Chris. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Everyone, you notice how the emphasis was an old friend. That's very true. So I've been around probably even a little bit longer than Chris, and I've been practicing digital marketing my whole career in the technology space. I do claim myself to be a digital migrant, meaning I started my career before digital kind of exploded. So I have the benefit of migrating to digital, but I do know the traditional marketing or old world marketing side as well. And it's an interesting perspective to have both sides of that equation. So I've spent my career at a few years at Avaya, Hewlett Packard, DXC, and Amelia, and now I'm with a fantastic company called Inovalon in the data and SaaS space for healthcare. Thanks for having me again, Chris.
Great, my pleasure. Yeah, Nick and I have done many events over the years. I think the last one, though, was probably 6-7 years ago. We were on stage at a demand-based customer event, and I remember somebody calling out a question, but it was prefaced with, "You guys are like the grandfathers of ABM." And I think it was heartfelt, but we were both a little bit offended. So Nick, I'm using this opportunity to rebrand ourselves, and we're going to be rebranded as the godfathers of ABM. How do you like that, Nikki?
I like this much, much better, OG, much better.
What scares me a little bit is the missing fingers, or the 1.5 fingers missing. So
that's another presentation.
Yes. So Nick and I are going to go through some topical areas, and I'll come at it from a technology perspective, and Nick, of course, will come at it from a practical use implementation perspective. And so we really hope that you enjoy what we're going to share, and of course, you can reach out to us afterwards with any questions. So 4 areas come to mind that I think are on top of everyone's agendas this year and next. One, of course, AI and its impact on B2B. We all know about content and writing content, but I think there's a huge impact, obviously, on making smarter decisions and measurement. There's also this notion of the dark funnel. People talk about it a lot. Nobody's really talking about how to fix it, and so we're going to have a conversation about that as well. Third, we're going to talk about dollar inefficiencies in B2B and some opportunities to find savings and be more efficient in where you deploy capital. Last but not least, every year, this is always one of the #1 topics. That's the financial impact of marketing, and really kind of proving the investments and the return to other people in your organization. So as we get into this, I think it would be good, just given both Nick and I have been around the block here for 20, 25 years, it'd be good to kind of paint the last 20 years in 60 seconds. It is, as I go back to when I was a marketer in 2000, I was very frustrated because most of the technologies out there were designed for B2C, and you were kind of forced to just spray and pray and make it up in volume, right? Everything was about more clicks, more emails, more web traffic. And so when I started Demandbase, I really wanted to fix marketing. Like, how do we help B2B marketers focus their dollar investments just on the companies that their sales team is selling to? It sounds easy, but it took forever to really get ABM as a bona fide category, and now that's taken off. But as we go to the future, especially now in today's climate, everyone's talking about efficiency. How do I be more efficient with my dollar spend? And I think there's a big opportunity here to help marketers measure things on a level playing field, not rely on each vendor's different KPIs, and do it in a way where we can understand how we're doing versus companies like me or companies that are targeting the same type of businesses. And so I think this whole notion of efficiency and bringing finance into the marketing world is incredibly important. And so I really appreciate your perspective, Nick, on kind of this next phase that we're entering.
Yeah, for sure, Chris. There's no question what you said is absolutely true. I've experienced the same shifts in my career. Volume always makes you feel great. You know, that was the one positive thing of volume is, you know, you brag to your friends and family about sending a gazillion emails to huge populations and being able to reach X many eyeballs and all of that, which was, again, the only thing that we could measure at the time, and that was sufficient. But as I started to move into ABM, frankly, with your platform help and your team, we definitely shifted in that quality realm. And I think that has done a lot to build credibility in the organization, especially between marketing and sales. Because, you know, honestly, sales only really cares about whether or not you serve their account. They don't care as much about efficiency of the dollars you spend. So everybody's happy. But now in this world where we have the tools and we have the ability to start to really micro measure the efficiency of the channels and the touches and the various vehicles that we use, this is more of a C-level conversation with the CEO and CFO. And it's extremely important because money is as tight as always. If it never gets more, it always gets less. So as the money gets less and less, the question of efficiency is absolutely at the center. And you mentioned before about the dark funnel and some other areas that have been blind spots for marketers in the past. So I'm very, very excited for this new stage. I think it's going to take things to the next level.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. So I think one thing is important to start with is this notion of efficiency. And I kind of share with our team and other B2B marketers, to start with, B2B marketing is just inefficient. Most companies are only selling or marketing to a few % of the available businesses out there. Further, most technologies are built for B2C. So it's not uncommon for a B2B marketer to have 85% of their traffic from companies that they can never sell to. The challenge is they just look at the entirety of the numbers and they don't really focus on that 15%. Or how do I really focus more of the dollars on the vendors and channels that are able to help me reach that target account list? And I think that's where the rubber hits the road, and we can provide platforms where people can measure all these vendors and channels on the same playing field and compare the dollars at the same level. And so I'm sure, Nick, you've seen some of this along your journey on inefficiencies. Are you trying to do more with less, and how are you kind of guiding your team there?
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, it's always the 80-20 rule. And you know, I think with ABM, we were able to make that case and say, look, if we have $1 to spend, I'd rather spend it on the 20% of accounts that are bringing 80% of the revenue, right? That's the theory, and that's actually worked quite well. But ABM is only a subset of the marketing spend, right? So if you look at the rest of the marketing spend that's driving website traffic, exactly to your point, nobody's asking, is this traffic coming from the right companies? Everybody's asking, are you getting better engagement? Are you getting better stickiness? Are you getting more eyeballs? Are you getting more visits per month? All of those good things that we all measure, but nobody's really asking, are the visits from the companies that will get you to where you need to go from a revenue standpoint? And nobody's asking because nobody knew that there is a valid answer to that question. So it's not that nobody cares. Nobody thought it was possible. I think with the beginnings of what you guys have done in the past in your previous companies and what you guys are doing now, the ability to shed light on that, and not only an ABM standpoint, but every marketing interaction is put through the filter of, but you're interacting with the right people or the right companies. That's just a wonderful place to be. It's just new territory for all of us to even think about, but it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I think that is true. ABM is certainly a category, but the notion of account-based should transcend across social events, really all channels and all investments, if you're in B2B marketing.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Oh, that's right. So one thing comes to mind, this word attribution, sometimes I call the A word, because I've been a non-believer for years and years and years. And the reason is that most of the attribution technologies out there have always been, I'll call it credit-based. They're trying to slice up $100 and give exact credit to first touch, last touch, different models. The signal considered is limited to only the people that filled out the forms, and whatever algebra was used for this quarter doesn't scale to next quarter. And I just don't think it's ever really worked well. However, we have hired the co-founder of Visible as our CTO at Channel99. And there is a whole new pattern emerging, I think, for the future of attribution as it relates to B2B. And that's the ability to use AI in looking at patterns of influence on deals that occur, but also being able to look at much larger volumes of data. Most companies don't realize they don't have enough data really for AI to work just on their data set. It really requires a universe of data to learn from and build saturation curves, and the math gets extensive. But I think there's a good opportunity there. But even before that happens, we have to solve for this kind of dark funnel and this direct channel, which is really should be called unknown. And that's we'll talk about it in just a minute, but kind of curious, Nick, I'm sure you've seen battles over attribution and arguments, and I suspect nobody's ever won, and those arguments are still happening, but curious if you could shed some light there.
Nobody's ever won because there is no winner in these kind of discussions. It's not possible. As a matter of fact, just today, literally, we were having a discussion about marketing sourced leads versus marketing influenced opportunities and revenue. And as marketers, we understand that intuitively how important that is. I will tell you, for all my years, there hasn't been one conversation that I've had with a sales leader that was positive when it comes to marketing attribution, because it's always the eyes start rolling and it's like, I get it. I get it. You guys touch everything, but don't give me all the science and math. Can you tell me how many leads you brought in, right? So, and I think the reason is because we haven't had a standard scientific method to be able to look at as an industry and say, this is the method, this is the go-to source, it's a single source of truth. So don't believe me, believe the platform, because a lot of smarter people than I have figured out a way to do attribution right. And then it doesn't become my method versus somebody else's method. It becomes a single fact, just like nobody questions what's in the CRM system. Hopefully nobody will question what is in the attribution model. But it's absolutely a pain point. And it's vital for a marketing leader, right? To be able to say marketing does a lot more than generate leads that lead directly to sales. We are a sales accelerator in so many other ways, but we can never really prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the kind of the anatomy of any deal is always made up of both sales and marketing at different stages and in different ways. So yeah, that's a really interesting, and I have heard that too, Nick, where people fight, is this a sales driven or marketing driven? The reality is it should be both. So
yeah,
that's fascinating. So let's dive into this kind of dark funnel. So you hear about this a lot, and I know, Nick, you're pretty active on LinkedIn doing posts, and I'm sure you get a lot of reward out of that through engaging traffic on your website. But I'm sure it's really hard to measure because people aren't clicking on something and coming, so you can't necessarily measure it through a UTM. So I think if we can solve this dark funnel piece, that's not just social, I would also characterize it on as any ad that's served that influences somebody to do a search or come to the website. It makes up 65% of B2B marketers' web traffic gets thrown in this bucket called direct. And it's got to be frustrating because a lot of money gets spent to generate that traffic. Nobody knows where it's coming from, though. And the reality is people read a white paper. They saw your post. They saw an ad. They did something else. And then they either just typed in the URL or did some other kind of search and came to the site. And I think to solve for that will help make attribution work, but it also give credit where credit's due, because I think a lot of people are measuring these vendors and channels with too little information, and the cost for LinkedIn or Demandbase or 6 Cents or whatever it is you're using to drive traffic should come down, because those services will get a lot more credit for driving that activity. So as I kind of look to the future, I think it's critical that we implement these technologies, these pixel and verification type technologies that we're working on, specifically for B2B. And I say B2B because in the world of consumer marketing or B2C, there are solutions out there like Double Verify and IAS that are built around measuring brand safety and human versus non-human traffic, and pretty sophisticated and do a great job. In B2B, while those things are important, what's more important is my ad being served to the companies I want to sell to? Yes or no? And did it end up in engagement on my website or with other assets? Yes or no? We got to solve for that. And I think we're getting very close. And so excited for the future of attribution once this gets nailed down. And I'm just curious, Nick, you've worked at a bunch of companies, you've invested over the years as a marketing leader and advertising a variety of programs. You must see this challenge with kind of understanding the right measurement for these investments.
No question. And honestly, before I saw the presentation and we started to discuss this, the dark funnel wasn't a term that I was familiar with, but it's such a great term. That's exactly what it is. And it creates a very dark mood, I will tell you, because whenever I look at our statistics, and this is web metrics over the years, and I always go to channel traffic and just try to see where the traffic is coming from. And the discussion I've always had with my digital marketing leader, usually Chris Marin, is, hey, can I just make some assumptions then that the missing part is equally, balanced in the channel mix that we see? And the answer is, of course not, because there's some channels that are given preferential treatment this way because you have a more direct line of sight, whether it's with your UTM codes or something else. And there's other channels that by definition are at a disadvantage. So you can't just basically look at your mix and say, okay, well, the rest of the 2/3 have the same mix. That's not the case. So you do have a big blind spot, And everybody knows that in B2B, nobody just wakes up one morning and decides to come to your website. Just they didn't have a dream about it, and they must have seen you, have touched you, have talked to you, have been reached out by your salespeople at some point, and at some point they come in. To be able to get access to that and shed light on that part of the funnel would be a magical moment, honestly, because then all of a sudden you rerun your financials and your ROI with a fresh perspective, and you have a clear view of exactly where your channel mix is, and from there, lead attribution and funnel attribution and all of that becomes a lot clearer. So I think that's a big missing link in B2B.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you look at if you have like two different options to invest, and one is $3 or $4 CPM, and maybe another one is $20, and you go with the $3 one because it's cheaper. And it's like, well, is it 7 times more efficient or inefficient? And you usually get a glazed look on your face. I'm like, you got to look at the whole picture and the whole ecosystem of that investment, and what does it result in from the companies that can buy from you. You have to eliminate all the waste. Otherwise, it's a little bit of, you can't make it up in volume, so to speak.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. So the last topic, year after year, marketing survey after marketing survey, the number one thing is like better understanding the financial impact of marketing. It keeps coming up over and over, and it's frustrating that it hasn't really been solved. So that's one of the things we're going out to solve. And it's I don't want to say it's basic math, but it's pretty simple math. And the challenge is the data is that to get at the right numbers exists in different systems, and the language across finance and marketing is always a little bit disjointed. And if I kind of look back, 10 years ago, everybody was being measured on MQLs and SQLs and, acronyms that anybody outside of marketing really doesn't care about. And then you have the situation where marketing's making their numbers and sales isn't. And so there's a lot of misalignment there. And, the reality is an average marketer is really good at repackaging. So there's always some shuffle going on. And the reality is, I've done a lot of, studies, and I've done a few blogs on the notion of marketing's contribution to customer acquisition cost. The reality is, 50% of customer acquisition cost in B2B is from the investment in pipeline acquisition. So it's a huge spend category with a lot of inefficiency. So it's just ripe with opportunity. But to really improve it, you got to be able to measure it. And the things that finance cares about, as you know, Nick, are, what's my cost to generate a pipeline opportunity? Okay, I know I need 4 to get 1 deal. I can plan around that. I can budget around that. But still, that seems to be, somewhat elusive for some marketers. And I think the more we can evolve into metrics that the sales team gets, the finance team gets, we'll be in a much better place. But I also think that means that marketing teams need to be measured on those metrics as well. And it's not that MQLs aren't important. It's just they're not aligned with the rest of the organization. And I also think companies that segment their marketing into acquisition versus retention and growth budgets will be further ahead, because as you know, those are very different mechanisms and processes. And then the last, I think will take a while to get to, but super important, is this notion of understanding benchmarks. Like, I know how well I did versus last quarter's numbers, but is it good? Is it good? Is it industry average? Is it good for companies like me? Is it good for companies that are trying to sell to the same type of businesses that have a similar ASP? I think that data is much harder to get to, but I think will be super powerful for us in the future. And so, Nick, I know you've been both small, large global enterprises. You've probably seen a lot over the last, just 10 years. Any perspective on this marketing measurement and how to measure people?
Yeah, and listen, you touched on a lot of areas that are near and dear to my heart, because as a CMO, that's what you get hired to do, right? At the end of the day, it's about hitting the financial goals of the business. And I've stated before, and I've said it as I came into my new company here at Inovalon, that I don't care what your marketing metrics are, you are not a successful marketing organization unless the company hits its financial goals. Simple as that. So I will never claim success. Even if I had 100% visibility into all of these, metrics that we talk about, and I was able to lighten the dark funnel, my responsibility is still to make sure that the company hits its numbers. So we have skin in the game the same way as sales does. Having said that, being able to at least show that how the marketing contribution has come to be with a level of confidence that's much higher than it is today will definitely help the conversation, because you could have a bad year and still say, look, I'm not going to claim success because sales is not claiming success. However, we've hit our targets in this and this and that area, but with higher level of confidence. The example that you mentioned is actually a real example that I've gone through where, we would hit MLs, MQLs, NSQLs way above target, and sales wasn't hitting its numbers anywhere near. Some of it could be some of the assumptions you made were wrong. So you're making assumptions in SQLs and MQLs based on what you think the company is going to need in terms of funnel. So you reverse engineer it. But if your assumptions are wrong in terms of the average deal size or win rate, then you're going to hit your MQLs, but you're not going to hit the financial goals because win rate is out of your hands, for example. So there's all kinds of things that could go wrong. But when you add to that incomplete information or data that you have less than 100% confidence in, then it's a mess. So I think we can go from a mess to a data-driven conversation that we can have with the business and have our eyes wide open as to what marketing contribution really is. And again, as a CMO, I would advise others as well, never claim success unless sales hits its numbers, but have your data, and this kind of direction that we're going into now is going to allow you to walk in that room with all the confidence in the world that the data is accurate. That's huge for us.
That's right. Like the minute the data is flawed, everything else kind of goes out the window. So you need to have that source of truth. And
yeah.
I found a lot of marketers, when I was back at Demandbase and we had our measurements and our KPIs and our analytics, they were frustrated because not only did they have to adapt to ours, they had to adapt to 7 or 8 other vendors that they're using. And it was hard to make sense of it all because we all had nuanced measurements. And so that's, another reason I think this notion of a single platform for B2B marketers to measure performance is where we need to get to.
Yeah, and I mean this is standard that we can all point to. You can't have multiple standards. It's almost like there's a methodology and a vendor and a standard that you can point to and say, this is the golden standard for how you attribute marketing influence or marketing contribution. That would be huge. You did mention one thing that I wanted to make a last point. You talked about benchmarks. Having a platform that allows you to not only see your true ROI by channel, by campaign, by any other angle you want to see it, but also comparing yourself to your peers is huge, right? Because it's one thing to say, look, my ROI is X. Well, how do I know what good is good enough? How do I know if that particular ROI for that particular channel is great, other than Googling and saying, what's a good ROI for B2B tech company in LinkedIn, and then you get somebody who wrote a blog versus a platform that has hundreds of thousands of customers that are running and anonymizing that data and feeding you back where you are in terms of a benchmark. That would be absolute game changer.
That's right, because you might not have a problem where you think you have a problem and vice versa.
Yeah, you can feel very good about yourself because you went from mediocre to average, but you don't really know, what really, really good looks like. So that's the beauty of benchmarking from real data in a single platform that everybody or most everybody uses. So I would think that's a huge value adder.
Yeah. No, that's great. I appreciate your perspective and those comments. I think our business is done here, Nick, today. We're about to wrap. I want to thank you for your time and your contribution to this event, and excited to stay engaged with you and in Ovalon, and hopefully we have a relationship building between our two companies. And again, my name is Chris Golec, CEO, founder of Channel99, and guest today is Nick Panayi, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Ovalon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for watching. Click the agenda link at the top of your screen to choose your next session.